I don't know if I'm live. Decided to go live today because I didn't know what the hell I wanted to talk about today. So, well, it says I am live, but then it says on screen that I'm not live. So, I don't know what is going on. I wish YouTube would make something a little bit more streamlined in what I'm trying to achieve. And also just have a clue to what's going on. Like, all I see is one person is watching. Is that me? Okay. Come up. Okay, I see what I see. All right. All I see is okay, that one person who is watching something pretty bad from the castle tutelage, trying to fumble over this live event thing, and I think I thought I had the chat on, and I don't know where to go get the chat now. Says 2 people are watching. It doesn't show how to turn. Oh, OJ for hire. Yeah, I am live. It is kind of interesting trying to navigate through some of this crap that YouTube, and you have to marry it up with another program, and you really don't really understand how certain things are aspects of what you want to achieve, and it becomes kind of fumbling, and then you hear some guy on YouTube who's trying to do certain things. But if you have any questions, please let me know. I really don't have anything that I want to really get into. That's why I came on live. I have a little bit of time to do something, and I'm trying to get certain things done as far as teaching the self-defense law in the state of Minnesota, and I've been trying to get a lot of that taken care of, and hopefully I'll have a website that is going to be coming up and running. I think my next scheduled class is August 26th, Saturday, August 26th. It's going to be in the one of the Bloomington hotels. I haven't decided which one yet, so we're just going to go from there. So if you do have any questions, by all means, the 2 of you, please let me know. What I find interesting, and what I'm really getting into these days, is I will tell people what self-defense law really requires the individual to do, and for some reason they try to kill the messenger. Like, every woeful decision that they think the law of self-defense should be, they start poo-pooing it on me and try to make me the bad guy, and they start arguing with me, and it just becomes nonsensical, where I'm telling you what the law requires, and they tell me, well, and argue with me, well, that's not true. It should be something different. I should be allowed to, kill anyone who I want for any given reason that I want. And it is kind of strange that way, and kind of scary, that there are people who, and if you know my channel at all, you probably have a gun, and you are probably trying to learn about what is required for you in self-defense law. And it's daunting that people actually think this way, that they should be able to exterminate anybody for any reason at any given time. And it is believable to me that there are people who want to use the Second Amendment, but they are psychologically and emotionally not able to have a gun on their side. There's some people out there that are so emotionally fragile that it makes me wonder someday, and I'm glad that a use of force event is going to be so small. The chances of someone being in a use of force event would be so small that these people would actually get into a use of force event. But then you start to wonder again, are these guys who make excuses that the law isn't fair, that they should be able to execute anybody at any given time under any circumstances? And that's what really confounds me when I talk with people. I don't talk to people very much on forums, but I will talk to people who make comments on other YouTube channels because it's kind of easier for me. The forums, you have to go back there and keep checking, and I don't like giving my email out just because of the nature of the forums. So at least YouTube, when somebody comes back to it, you can rebuttal their thing. I do believe, OJ, that people are so uninformed that it's scary, but they choose to remain uninformed, which is even the possibility of you getting into a use of force conflict with them even greater. So if you're a reasonable person and you, and that's why I don't, in the past, I loved reading books on psychopaths. I liked that kind of, I wouldn't say I like that kind of mindset. It's just fascinating to me that there is a certain part of the segment of the population who has no emotional bearing on what exactly is going on. There are people out there, but then there are people who have the emotional stability, but really do not give a rat's pituitary gland what the law requires. The perfect example is when people come back at me and say, I don't want to follow the law because the law is too encumbering. No, it's not. Not for what I teach. Innocence, eminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. If you use the 80-20 rule, those 5 elements of self-defense will cover up to 80% of self-defense law. You know if you are the innocent party. You know if you're an immediate threat of death or great bodily harm. You know if it's deadly force or ordinary force. You know if you can get away quickly. And reasonableness. People really have a warped view on reasonableness. They are always in their head of subjectively, reasonably. If all I feel, and this is the most common, I even got this today, all you need to do is have a feeling that you are in great bodily harm or death. That's not true. It has to be subjectively and objectively reasonable. If it's just in your mind, it's not. You're going to have the judge, the jury, the prosecutor, people who were never even there at the fight, are going to be looking into your mindset of reasonable. People will kind of think, well, what exactly is reasonable? Is it the average aggregate of people that are in the jury? No. Oh, yeah, that's right. I remember last time I talked to you, you were in California, I believe. And even in California, avoidance is not necessary. A lot of people don't understand that California was the original stand your ground state. But there's also, I know I'm going on various aspects of it, but people don't understand. There's hard stand your ground states, and then there are soft stand your ground states. Stand your ground generally doesn't mean that you get to sit there. In Missouri, humidity sucks there right now, I bet. Up here in Minnesota, I'm freaking dying. But there are hard stand your ground states and soft stand your ground states. You don't get to sit there and be like a stubborn mule. If you swerved your car and you hit the brakes a little bit so you wouldn't kill a puppy dog, and some guy behind you rammed into you, you disabled their car, you couldn't drive anymore, and you finally stopped maybe 400 yards away, whatever the distance was. You get out of your car, you see this crazed maniac guy swinging a sword. You know, it's a big one, so you can see it just waving up there. When I get up to you, I'm just going to slice your throat. I'm going to tear your intestines out and straddle it all over the highway here. People are going to be doing donuts on your intestines. And you sit there. Your car is perfectly able to drive. And you sit there and you wait for the guy to come within 21 feet of you. You bring out your Smith & Wesson shield and you put 6 in his skull. Is that reasonable? You could have just got into the car and drove away. You had all that time for the guy with the sword to run 300 yards. Let's just say it took a minute. How about a fat guy like me? It took him 4 minutes to get to you. Utah specifically has a black letter law in it saying that if it is so outrageously and unreasonable, Utah is a state, stand your ground state, but if it's so outrageous and unreasonable, the finder of fact can consider the reasonableness of your actions. Unlike the state of California, where it has in the black letter of the law, you can, it's in there that the finder of fact, the jury, cannot consider reasonableness. And I'm with I'm for stand your ground in so many different aspects, but I like the Utah's black letter law, and Minnesota was going through it right this year, where they're trying to do their own stand your ground and with other provisions and curtilage and all that other stuff. I think it's totally reasonable that if you were so unreasonable in trying to get away and not trying to get away, that the finder of fact could consider it not self-defense. All right? That is, not 6, maybe. Yeah, you're right. Not 6 bullets, but 1. I was talking about my ability, Keith. So we'll just go. Yeah, I'm always talking from my perspective and not from someone that is a better marksman than I. So that's what I see. That there's 4 people watching. If you do have any questions, by all means, just go for it. And and OJ brings up a good. I avoid bad areas because avoiding a fight is a win, and that if you are a martial artist, you're going to know that saying very well. I get this quote wrong all the time, and I'm not exactly who did it, know who said it. But when I was a child, I did stupid things. When I was a child, I went to stupid places. I am no longer a child. I don't go to stupid places and do stupid things. Obviously, whoever wrote it was much more eloquent than I. It wasn't 100% for that. But there is no reason for me to go down to Lake Street, Minneapolis. I'm not going to buy drugs. I'm not going to get a happy ending massage. There's no reason for me to be down there. And when people, last week I had someone, a subscriber, ask me if I ever shot anyone because they wanted to know if I could relate to them under that specific circumstance. And it was kind of hinting at the idea, if I have never shot at anybody before, that I had no right to talk to him about what the law requires in a self-defense situation. That logical fallacy just troubles me to the nth degree. Nobody chooses to be a victim. Nobody chooses to be a victim. However, for the past really almost 20 years of my life, I have been very careful in the situations I get into. The situations I get out of are even more impressive in a lot of different areas. That is something that is more important. So when you have somebody that has never got into a physical altercation since my early 20s, I've never had a confrontation where someone yelled at me in an elevated fashion, and if they did, I was able to get out of it quickly. Those are the type of things where instead of going to the range and spending another $50 on shooting another 100 rounds, take that time to learn about visual cues on an attack. That is going to serve you so much better than a one-time range visit of an hour shooting 100 rounds. It's going to have a little bit more benefit for you, especially after several years of going to the range and slowly squeezing the trigger. That's the advice that I have for a lot of people, is learn the law in your state, and for OJ for hire, learn the law in 48 states, and then go from there. It's there's YouTube is the last great bastion, if you will, of just absolutely rude people, because they are avatars. They don't have their real name. And I'm looking at, I don't know if Keith Gregory is that your real name? I don't know. OJ for hire, I doubt it if that's your name. You know, for a long time I used Caden, and the reason I used it is because on my previous channel I used my real name, and a nut job actually found my address, called my phone. You know, when you're dealing with numbers, the psychopaths come out of the woodwork like you wouldn't believe. And YouTube is part of that, the psychopaths need. That's what they feed on, is just stuff like that. No, it's not. Keith Gregory said, someone said it is illegal to carry more than one firearm on your person. Have you heard this? No, I've never heard this, but if it came from somebody, the people who are named somebody are almost wrong every single day. You can carry multiple weapons on you unless your permit specifically says you can only carry, like state of California. You can register 3 guns, and those are the only guns that you can register on you. Yeah, and like Oklahoma, OJ for hire, Oklahoma, you can carry as many as you can carry. New York City, what they actually did in New York City is, and they made it famous for carrying multiple handguns, is since there was a magazine capacity in New York City, what they did is get a bunch of revolvers on them and threw the gun away when it was empty. So I love people who, the somebodies in the world. You know, lately it's really, I've been having some interactions with people on YouTube who claim to be police officers. And police officers have given the worst advice in a lot of different scenarios. Yeah, the New York reload, you know. Just throw away one away and you got another good one ready to go. And what I have learned, what police officers do, and talking to them and listening to other other shows, is that When police officers learn about use of force from the city, county, or whatever city agency they deal with, they're not taught to protect the officer from prosecution. They're actually taught use of force law for the city not to get sued. The proverbial, and I've actually heard a Minnesota cop say this, if you shoot somebody in the yard, pull them into the house. I actually heard a cop say that. I've actually heard a federal officer, and he wouldn't say what agency he was from. It was probably NOAA or the Bureau of Land Management. He was probably an administrative cop of some sort who didn't know that there are different levels of ordinary force. There's different levels of ordinary force, but there's only one level for deadly force. He actually told me if you are ever in a fight with a knife, if someone had a knife, the only thing that you can go after him with is another knife. Which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. What are you going to do to the person who's attacking you with a knife? Excuse me, time out, don't go any further. I'm going to have to search the area for another knife, or, matter of fact, do you have a second one where we can, fight mano a mano with another knife? How dumb is this officer telling people that proportional force means if someone is attacking you with a knife, the only proportionality you can use is another knife? Especially if you don't have one. Go look for another knife, walk into Kmart. Hey, excuse me, I see a Walmart over there. Do you mind if you just stay right here? I'm going to go across the street to Walmart, buy a knife, and I'll be right back. The one thing that I have learned, and some of you guys are going to already hear this, the greatest obstacle to discovery isn't ignorance, it's the illusion of knowledge. And what that means is what you think you know will prevent you from learning what you should know. And I have to go through that with me all the time. I have to learn certain things because I may think I know stuff, but months or years later, I might find something in a different position that may put a certain different light on that particular situation. There is always that struggle between knowledge and wisdom. But if you don't have wisdom, you cannot use the knowledge correctly. Mark Twain said something a long time ago, and I've kind of twisted around to make it my own. Knowledge is confident in the fact that a tomato is a fruit. However, wisdom is guided that a tomato has no business in a fruit salad. I want to be that chef who knows that a tomato doesn't need to be in a fruit salad. I want to be known as a chef that a strawberry is actually a vegetable and works well in a fruit salad. Those are the things that I would like to learn. The books I read, the people I talk with, those are the things that I want to learn. So I don't know a lot about the law, but what I have done is focused on a very specific element in the law, and that is about self-defense law. And I don't want to get into the weeds because you guys don't need to get into the weeds. And when people say that I don't want to follow law because it's too complicated, well, not if you do innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. If you're good with all those, let the lawyers fight about the facts. And the perfect example is Andrew Branca had a case in Ohio, and it was something stupid. A guy called in a contractor to take a look at his garage, and the contractor, being a contractor trying to get as much money out of the guy as possible, he said, well, I can't fix it. What you're going to have to do is you're going to replace it. So the homeowner got kind of bitchy about it and started arguing with the guy, and then the contractor got bitchy back at him, and he started barking at the other guy. The homeowner went and got a gun and started waving it and pointing it at him, and it became a problem. The state of Ohio has two different little things that people need to be aware of. In any other state, by preponderance of the evidence, the prosecution needs to prove that it was not self-defense. State of Ohio, it is your responsibility to prove that it was self-defense by a majority, 51%. The other issue of the thing is, just because it is in his house and he has a castle doctrine, the one thing that negated that was he was an invited guest in the house, and you have to throw the person out first before you can do any deadly threat. And castle doctrine is different from state to state, so don't take that wording to the bank in your state, but in most of the states it's going to be like that. Self-defense is such a fact-driven thing that when Andrew Branca was talking to him, he got a narrative from the homeowner that the guy was screaming at him, banging on the hood of his car. Now, Andrew Branca is a smart dude. He goes, well, wait a minute. How was the guy banging on the car? Was the car inside the garage? And the homeowner said, no, he was in the driveway. So Andrew Branca produced a fact, a provable fact, that the contractor left the home into the driveway, banged on his car, and then came back into the home, where at this point he was not an invited guest, which flips it over, and now the state of Ohio had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this was not a self-defense event. The state shut that case down real quickly. Everything is fact-driven. So when you guys go out in the world, you're doing innocence, eminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. That is probably going to save your butt 80 to 90, and 80, I would say closer to 95% of the time. Let the lawyers figure out that remaining 20 to 5%. You're paying them. They need to have, again, when I go through this, the 80-20 rule. 20% of the causes have 80% of the facts. Innocence, eminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness. Those are the causes you're going to have, and it's going to affect 80% of the law. Do you want to spend your time learning that 80% of the time, 80% of the law that may affect 5 to 15, 20% of your situations out there? No, let the lawyers do that. Don't sweat the small stuff. You know, people are always getting into it. Well, if I was in a crowd and somebody pointed out a gun at me, and then I took mine out and I started pointing at him, and then I incidentally swept some people, and am I going to be charged for assault because those people got swept by my muzzle? There is rational fear out there. Rational fear, and again, let's get to this. There's something called a transference. Because you did something, that's going to be the criminal's fault, your attacker's fault. Those charges won't be charged to you, but if something does, it's going to be the criminal's fault. And other people will say, well, I had to do to retreat, but the only way that I could retreat is to go past a no trespassing sign. Right? Are you an innocent person if you're breaking the law? Well, no. But there's something called the doctrine of necessity. The doctrine of necessity will allow you to break certain laws to achieve what you need to achieve. Let's just say you were driving 50 miles an hour in a 30 mile an hour zone to get away from somebody. The doctrine of necessity allows you to do that. So there's going to be certain arguments. There is no reason to be fearful of the law if you do innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonless. There just isn't. All right. I see that there are, well, there was 7, now back down to 6 watching. If you do have any questions, comments for me, please let me know. Well, so I'm going to be putting up this video pretty quick. I was going to play around with this little screen that I have out here. I'm not exactly sure, how I could be. I wonder if I can open it up a little bit more. And as people under, there's me a couple years ago. I don't like having my face on the internet anymore for obvious reasons. If you look right here, I've been getting in heavily about modifying your handgun. And to me, it's all about narrative. It is about your narrative. If it's a good shoot, it's a good shoot. You don't have to worry about it. However, if your self-defense claim does have some warrants, you want to be as clean as possible, trying to get kicked out of the system, the legal cog, as soon as you can. That is going to be the most important. Do you think Minnesotans will go to a constitutional carry? Well, they're trying to do it with, I think it's HR 280, and it didn't go anywhere last session. It had, or was it a separate bill? I don't remember. I think the Stand Your Ground went a little bit further than, and I think I had a newscast on it. I think I had a newscast on it here. I think it's in here somewhere. But no, I really do not think Minnesota will ever go to a constitutional carry because it is such a liberal state. The outlying counties are not very liberal, but again, Minneapolis and St. Paul is the tail that wags the dog. Just like Chicago is the tail that wags Southern Illinois, and it is that much. I think, and I think I've talked to you before, and you asked me about national reciprocity, and I'm still stuck on it. I think it should be a states' rights, even though yes, I was from California, but with the new judge in the Supreme Court, I think they're going to pick and choose the right case to hear next year, whether it's Peruta or the one in Connecticut. I believe it's Connecticut. I don't remember, or was it Washington D.C.? I don't remember. But let's actually see what happens with that. I just renewed my Utah CCW. I think I'm going to let my Arizona go and keep my my Florida permit. So I'll have Florida, Utah, and Minnesota. If the climate changes again and it turns south, I will probably go after Arizona again. But right now it seems like Florida and Arizona pretty much mirror each other as far as states, and I don't travel as much as I used to. Yeah, I think the state should be in charge and not the feds. I think the feds screw up too many times. But when people, and I cannot blame the people in California, Washington D.C., New York, Maryland, New Jersey. I cannot blame. Well, Illinois passed it with good results. I cannot blame them for wanting a national reciprocity. I just can't blame them. You can't really go against people who are like that. So it's a tough situation for the people in California. They were given Peruta for a few months, and then people who were living in San Francisco shut it down. They didn't like what happened in the en banc, so they went to the full court, and they were shouted down. So we will see that. So, 7 you're watching. Any more questions? If so, go ahead and make your questions. Hopefully, something to do with self-defense. Some things that you are trying to understand or familiarize yourself with, or like Keith said before, he heard somebody, the proverbial somebody, or my uncle's friend's neighbor Bob told me. Um, I want to make sure in when I was talking about the police giving bad advice, there are some really good cops who give good advice. It's just the ones who go by department policy and not civilian law are the ones that are really doing more damage than yo-yos on YouTube. And some guys who don't understand what is going on call me a yo-yo, and I'm a lightning rod in that area. But it is what it is. I mean, I don't. Wonder if I can get there from here. I wonder. I know. I don't think so. Yeah, I can't. I gotta play with this thing a little bit more, and I thought I was going to be using it as an aid a little bit more. So, with no other questions that are coming in about self-defense law, I'm going to be cutting it short. Probably take a shower and get out of this heat of the. At least I'm not in Missouri though. With rain just humidity just sticking to you, it's just unbelievable down there. So, my name is Caden. This is Castle Toolage, your home defense network. I really hope this helped. Thank you. If I could turn it off. Can I turn it off? Hello? Turn me off. I'm still trying to turn me off. Turn me off. If I could turn it off. Turn me off. Can I turn it off? Hello? I'm still trying to turn it off. I'm still trying.